Hey friends, thanks for joining me. Today I've got a very cute mini book for you that has a surprise waiting inside, and hopefully you'll like it. So I'm going to start off with the base for my album. I've used some of the gorgeous papers from the June main kit. So there is a combination of some beautiful exclusives for HipKit, as well as elements and ephemera from the Happy Blooms collection from Pink Fresh Studio. So to make my life easy, I created the album, and I think those pages are 7 by 6. So out of a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, I could get two full, how do I say it, full length pages, which you can fold in half then and use for a 4 page spread. Gosh, I'm not making much sense, am I? But hopefully you saw that. So I just simply took some 7-inch high papers, folded it in half, and now I've got 4 pages out of it. Gosh. So to start with, I will look at the cover, and I'm using some of the Sweet Project Pocket Life cards. I believe this is from the cut apart sheet, and I'm going to turn this one into a pocket. So part of my challenge this week has been to create a project, but to have some pull-out elements and surprise elements, which hopefully I will tick all the boxes. So what you can see here is I'm taking the standard 3x4 card, and I'm going to take another card, which is the journal card, which will go inside. So it just needs to be a little bit more narrow, so it'll fit in with the stitched edge. So that'll be my front cover, and I'll layer it up with some pretty elements from those die cuts rather. So I'm not a big fan of purple, but that's more of a bluey purple, and that's quite a lot of that in this kit, which is actually really lovely, so it makes a nice change. And those exclusive papers from HipKit are really cleverly designed to coordinate. So what I'm doing here is I need to run it through my sewing machine, and I've made a real boo-boo on this. So my idea was to sew that into place, as you can see there, and then on the inside cover I tied the sewing elements with small pockets, and then that way I could hide that sewing and make the book cover more sturdy. So rather than just make plain pockets, what I am doing is I'm going to make them angled. So I'm just making 2 points from the bottom and the left hand side, and I am going to trim the paper at an angle between those 2 points. As long as they're even, it doesn't really matter where you make those 2 points. So I'm guessing mine will probably be a couple of inches or maybe 1.5 inches. Now I'm going to repeat this so it's slightly a larger point for the second piece of patterned paper. And again, I've just trimmed that down, so now you can see that I have 2 pattern papers that I'll be using for pockets. And I like to stitch around the edges of things, so I'll need to do that before I stick it into the book. Now, one of the things I tend to do is forget that I need to do something else and then do the stitching. So I'm going to make another little pocket to go on the front cover, or the front pocket here. And that's going to be really simple. So that will just be a rectangle. So I'm just trying to find some suitable paper to go on the front. I didn't want anything very garish because I've got a lot of pattern papers there. So I ended up with the exclusive paper with the little polka dots on. And I'm just going to trim that down, and mine's probably a couple of inches high by 3 inches wide. but don't quote me on that. Yep, so mine's probably 2.5 inches high, look, and 3 inches wide. And it's maybe a tad too big, so I've just trimmed it down. So whatever yours, if you were to reproduce this, you'll just need to size it, and I'll just eyeball whatever size you think is appropriate. And again, to make it look like a pocket, I'll find the centre of that rectangle and use my 1-inch punch just to notch out the top there. And then I can go and sew all my edges. So just be sure to sew the decorative edges for your pockets, and then once you've done those angles, you can sew all the way around. And as you can see here, then I've sewn, and now I've got 3 pockets, which I can store some ephemera or some extra photos and maps and things like that. So I do like to make these. So if you had a special occasion or kind of a travel themed album, these are great for storing those extra bits and pieces. I'm just going to put that into place. I do make them always a little bit smaller than the original page base, just because I do like to see that edge so that you can see all the different layers. But equally, you could make them exactly the same size as your original page. So I'm just going to use some of those beautiful bows. Now, I'm just going to check, but I think those came in the embellishment kit this month. They did. I love these fabric bows. We've had a few similar things in the last 12 months. And they're always really popular, and I really enjoy using them. So I'm just going to use a bit of clear glue there. My glue actually works with fabric and paper, so it's a pretty versatile glue. But you do need to keep it into place for a little while, just because it remains tacky for a little bit. And the cute thing about these bows is that you can change the bow and the tails and the band around the middle, and you can mix and match and have a lot of fun with those. So the main part of this project really will be the centre page, where I am going to put a little pop-up mechanism. So I've had a little experiment from using some cardstock. My idea is just to do a very simple mechanism and then decorate and disguise the pop-up elements with some die cuts and some punched stars. So I shall be using this paper to create the mechanism, and I'll leave the dimensions below. But I think initially when I made the card, the dimensions weren't correct, so effectively what happened was the mechanism was too tall, so things would end up popping outside of the card. So I'm fanning around a little bit. Even though I've done a test piece, I ended up not following that at all. So, but it was a good way to check something would work. So effectively you take a rectangle and you're going to fold it in half. I've used a bone folder. And then we're going to fold up the bottom to make a little stand. So I think my initial height looks like 7 centimetres to me, or 3 inches. So that allowed me a small margin for the folding mechanism. But as I say, this is too tall, so I do end up changing it a bit later on. But still the same simple idea. And I'm going to just notch off the edges just to make them look a bit better. And so that height of your card, the pop-up card, it will need to be at least that distance away from the top of your card or your book. So for example, if I were going to use a 5 centimetre card, so that the height is 5 centimetres, it will need to be at least 5 centimetres from the top edge. So the taller the card, the further down the page it will need to go, which kind of makes sense now I said it out loud. But at the time I was kind of making it up as I go along. So when you bear in mind that you have to add on your dies and the actual sentiment, you will need to adjust the position so that all of those things are hidden when the book is closed. Anyway, it makes more sense, I think, the further on we go with the actual process. And what you can see I'm doing here is I'm going to make some additional pop-ups that go in front of the main pop-up, and that will hold some extra die cut elements and decoration. Just gives it a bit more depth really. And again, this is simple in as much as you just fold the top edge, and that will stick to the back wall. You create another fold, then let's say it's a centimetre, and that will be 1 centimetre away from the back wall, and that's where you'll put your die cuts. And then you'll need another fold at the bottom, which is what will stick to the base of the pop-up, in this case my page. And we will need to set those at an angle. So the main pop-up will need to be at an angle to the fold of the book. And the first thing I thought I would do is decorate it while it's flat. So that's a very sensible idea. And I'm going to use some of these fabulous thickers. Now, I think we got these in April, but don't quote me. But you can see they are holographic. So they have that lovely blue. I can see blue, green, reds and yellows there. Absolutely stunning. And because the theme is congratulations, then I am going to say well done in my pop-up. So this is where a little more planning would have come in handy, look, because now my pop-up mechanism is not wide enough for my letters. So that's my next top tip for you. Make sure that when you measure yours, that you measure your letters so that they can all fit on. So that's easily remedied. We'll just cut out another piece of card. So I think mine ends up being 9 centimetres wide on each side, so that's 18 in total. So I'm just going to use that pattern paper. You could, of course, use plain paper or cardstock rather, and that doesn't matter. It's just a case, I thought I would use the pattern paper because that helps really that it's half decorated already. So back to the drawing board and just cut out another one, just as I did before, and then fold that in half. So once again, I'm just going to notch out the edges at the bottom of the base of that, and now my letters fit on. So because they're stickers, what I'm going to do is just attach them at the bottom, so line them up and attach them to the pop-up mechanism. So effectively, behind those letters now, they'll still be sticky, and that would obviously stick to the base. So what I'm going to do then, as you can see now, I've punched out a whole bunch of pretty stars using just a star punch and cardstock from the cardstock kit. So there's some mint, some lemon, lilac, and I think blue in there, which of course goes with the rest of the album. And so it's just a case of backing those letters now, just so that they don't stick to anything that they shouldn't, and it will also add further decoration and well, just more interest when it pops up. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm trying to set these at random at different heights. I'll just use a little dab of glue then to keep those into place. So now they're in position, and you could have a lot of fun with those. You could do this with hearts, some sparkly paper. So now the whole height of that pop-up mechanism will need to be lower than the top of the book. So I also make another boo-boo here and try and set the pop-up straight, which isn't what needs to happen. So I'm just using some temporary glue dots here just to see if it works, but it's not helpful at all really because I ended up setting it wrong anyway. But I did want to check that it doesn't go above the page, and trouble is it's so far down the page I felt like there'll be so much white space behind it, it would need something more. And for me to have that happen, I just need to shorten the whole thing. So really, if you can imagine that's the wall there, you really don't want it more than 1.5 to 2 inches. So I've just trimmed off the bottom of it because everything else is fine. I'm just going to add another score line for the base. So I hope you're still with me. But I left it in just because actually, I was learning by trial and error, and hopefully you can learn from my trials. So now it's a bit shorter. Can you see it can go further up the page, which is what I was after. But that mechanism needs to be at an angle. So don't set it perpendicular at 90 degrees to the spine. It does need to go at an angle. So the angle is up to you, but it does need to be angled. So I thankfully use double-sided tape to do this, because otherwise I would have had to scratch the whole thing and start again. So I'm going to use double-sided tape. I'll cut out the bit of video where it went completely wrong. And you can see I'm going to set it maybe, is that 45 degrees, 40 degrees, something like that. The more angled it is, the more angled it will be when it opens, which sounds obvious, but not obvious enough for me not to make the mistake in the first place. So now, as you can see, I set the right hand side, taped that into place, folded the book closed, and when I opened it again, the tape on the left hand side then stuck, so they were in exactly a mirror image of one another. So I'm now fiddling around with those little flaps that will give me a little bit more added dimension. And whilst I was looking at mechanisms, so I didn't know how to do a pop-up. I know I've got some dies that can do pop-ups and things, but I thought I would try and research how to do a pop-up, and I came across some really fancy pop-up mechanisms. So I do find them quite fascinating, and I just need some more practice, and then hopefully I can share those with you in future. So once those extra flaps are on the front, it's just a case now of decoration. So what I'll do is just add some more die cuts, some die cut leaves, and just to make it as pretty as possible. And you'll see those in the final photos. One thing I would say is once you've adhered the decorations to the mechanism, it's just to keep testing it, so opening and closing the book, just to make sure it all lies flat and hunky-dory. Those flowers are just so pretty, aren't they, from the Pink Fresh Happy Blooms collection. So I've cut off the rest of it, and I'll leave you with the close-ups, just because it was really time consuming. I really hope that you enjoyed the video and like the book. I do a full flip through on a separate video, so you can see the final result in a bit more detail. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've liked it, and if you do, you could give me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to my channel. I appreciate that so much, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye now.